Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 9 articles in this episode for you. Let's see here. We'll get started with the very first one on my list, and this is, well, get it to truthfeed.com. It says, even the liberal media is admitting Susan Rice is a liar. Everyone knows Susan Rice is a liar. She knows it. Conservatives know it. And yes, even Democrats know it. Liar. And that's the truth. What's amazing is that it has taken years for the major media to admit it, despite epic evidence. Even journalists have a breaking point. In this case, false statements about deadly chemical weapons angered conservatives for years. Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer, National Security Advisor, the liar-in-chief, according to The Blaze. Rice's willingness to misrepresent what happened during the Benghazi attack was so amazing that she repeated it on 5 separate Sunday morning news talk shows. It was a lie that might make Pinocchio proud. Lies about Syria to do just that. The Post gave Rice 4 Pinocchios out of 4. Liar scoreboard for bogus claims about removing Syria's chemical weapons. The Post criticized her for comments she made during a January 16th NPR interview. That a paper so blatantly anti-Trump as the Post would criticize her for deceit. The paper's fact checker called Rice's statement problematic before spending 1,400 words proving she lied. She did not explain that Syria's declaration was believed to be and thus was not fully verified, and that the Syrian government still attacks citizens with chemical weapons not covered by 2013 agreement. That tipped her wordsmithing towards a 4, wrote Glenn Kessler. The article cited several examples where Syria had continued to use chemical weapons. Memo to Obama, released 11 days before Rice's remarks on NPR, acknowledged that Syria continued to use undeclared chemical weapons, emphasizing Kessler. Mentioned the same NPR quote in an April 9th story about Obama's failure to remove destruction from Syria. Here is Rice's now famously false comment. She says, we were able to find a solution that didn't necessitate the use of force that actually removed the chemical weapons that were known from Syria in a way that force would never have accomplished. We were able to get the Syrian government to voluntarily and verifiably give up its chemical weapons stockpile. The Times' Peter Baker showed how nuanced Rice was, trying to be to make that explanation. Publicly, Mr. Obama's advisors sometimes referred to known or declared stockpiles to qualify their claims and sometimes did not. But from the start of the deal, there were discrepancies in Mr. Assad's weapons declaration. That's terrifying, given Rice's involvement in the Iran nuclear deal, which relies on similar reporting by a terror state. Detailed the times that Syria had used chemical weapons against its own citizens after the Obama administration said they were 100% gone. Rice's involvement is nothing new. She's been caught up in Benghazi scandal from the beginning. She went on Face the Nation falsely claiming we do not have information at present that leads us to conclude meditated or pre-planned. Also drew fire for defending an Obama administration effort to spin the Iran deal. A Times profile of Ben Rhodes, whose brother David is CBS's news, detailed plans to deceive the public. Remember, this isn't a conservative outlet. This is the New York Times. Here's the Times quote. Way in which most Americans have heard the story of the Iran deal presented, that the Obama administration began seriously engaging with Iran officials in 2013 in order to take advantage of a new political reality in Iran, which came about because of elections that brought moderates to the country, was largely manufactured for the purpose of selling the deal. Even where the particulars of that story are true, the implications that readers and viewers are encouraged to take away from those particulars are often misleading or false, unquote. was classic Rice. More denials. There was no effort or real reality of misleading, said Rice. According to the Daily Caller, there is nothing that Ben or I or anybody else was involved in. Explaining the Iran deal to the American public, said that wasn't factually correct. The notion that there was any ball to hide or spin to put on it, I think, is really misguided, she said. Next article I have is off of Breitbart. It says, internal BLM memo leaked. Make America great by expediting oil, gas production, increasing border security, and creating jobs. Get the hamster to bring it on up here on the screen for us. He's running as fast as his little legs will carry him. Come on, you little three-legged varmint. Well, he seems to be having a little issue here. Come on. Yeah, doggies. I'll tell you what, we'll just give him a kickstart and reload the page for him. Maybe he just needs to be jostled around in that wheel a little bit. I hate to rough him up too much. And I see the wheel is spinning. Okay, a Bureau of Land Management, BLM, internal working document that was leaked and reported on by the liberal Greenwire website spells out in detail the plan for making America great again. Any production of domestic energy, whoops, we ran a little too fast, there we go. It lists production of domestic energy resources, supporting law enforcement, the military, and enhancing border security. Several conservation and government watchdog groups about the direction the BLM is headed. List of agency priorities under the Trump administration surfaced this week. News reported on Monday. The draft 5-point BLM priority work list, first reported on yesterday by E&E News, calls for the agency to focus on increasing energy development in suitable areas of 245 million acres BLM manages. Wire on April the 10th, E&E reported. The document is divided into 5 sections: making America safe through energy independence, making America great through shared conservation stewardship, making America safe, restoring our sovereignty, back to work, and serving the American family. E&E gathered statements from environmental activists in response to the leaked document, which it said calls on the agency to streamline federal coal, hard rock mining, and oil, gas permitting processes. Prioritizes streamlining unspecified processes mandated by the National Environmental Policy, the NEPA, as well as land use planning to support energy and minerals development and other priorities, including rights-of-way processing for pipelines, transmission lines, and solar wind projects, E&E reported. America Safe headline, it calls taking action to coordinate with the Department of Defense to ensure that public lands and resources are available to support the mission of our military and to prioritize clearance and approval process border actions. E&E illustrated its report with a photograph of the wall now in place along the U.S. border with Mexico, vowed to expand. The document states that BLM will provide employment opportunities for veterans and youth work, but critics of Trump's plan expressed horror after reviewing the document. The Trump administration is prioritizing drilling, mining, and the construction of an immoral and environmentally destructive border wall, America's public lands and people's health. League of Conservation Voters Deputy Legislative Director Alex Terrell said in a statement given to E&E. Country's public land should be preserved for all people to enjoy and should not be handed over to corporate polluters, Terrell added. The priorities from Trump's Bureau of Land Management make it clear that the administration is not planning to manage our parks, places for the use and enjoyment of the people, but rather for the profits of corporate polluters. Director of the Sierra Club's Public Land Protection Campaign, said in a statement provided to E&E. America's public lands are worth much more than what lies underneath, Manuel said. These are places where families spend time together, where people and wildlife both can take refuge as they enjoy and explore our wild places. But E&E reported that a senior BLM official defended the priority work list, telling E&E News this week that it is meant to help agency staff understand the Trump administration will prioritize the agency's full multiple-use mission, including increased public access and recreation, and not concentrate solely on promoting fossil fuels or any other energy development. Serving the American family, BLM included in its recreational hunting and wildlife conservation opportunities, working with state and local law enforcement to improve public safety, and streamlining grazing permits to help American ranchers and farmers. There are several links to read more stories about this topic if you care to pull that up. That all I have for you is off of Liberty Headlines. Corruption rampant to control Alabama's elected offices. Governor Robert Bentley earning international headlines by resigning Monday in the wake of a scandal involving sex, misreporting of campaign finances, and multiple allegations of misuse of state resources, along with illegal intimidation tactics. All three branches of Alabama government have seen top officials evicted in the past year. Officials were Republicans, leaving the party's office holders in bad odor at a time, ironically, when the state party itself and elective levels is seeing such record success that the entire 22-member state steering committee was reelected in March. Bentley becomes the second Alabama Republican governor in a quarter century to resign due to ethics violations, following Guy Hunt, 23. More recently, former Democratic Governor Don Singelman was released in February from 6 years in a federal penitentiary for a bribery conviction after he lost a re-election bid in 2002. Officials ousted in the past year were State Supreme Court Chief Justice Roy Moore and House Speaker Mike Hubbard. Moore was suspended last September on the grounds that he violated state ethics guidelines by issuing a directive to judges to ignore federal court orders to award same-sex marriage licenses. Moore had been evicted from the same post 13 years earlier after directly defying federal court orders to remove a 5,280-pound monument of the Ten Commandments from the state courthouse, but then was elected again in 2012. 3 weeks ago, Moore won the right to an expedited appeal of his suspension. Hubbard, meanwhile, was convicted last June on ethics charges for commingling his business affairs with his lawmaking actions, but neither of those scandals was as salacious or multifaceted as Bentley's. Just a week after the governor and his wife Diane celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 2015, she filed for divorce amid rumors of an affair between her husband and top aide Rebecca Mason. Bentley fired Secretary of Law Enforcement Spencer Collier, who immediately said the firing came about because he, Collier, refused to cover up the rumored affair. Collier's allegations opened the door to a host of claims from various sources that Bentley repeatedly misused the state's police and other aides to hide the affair, sometimes at outrageous lengths. The very day after Collier was fired, sources provided the media with audio tapes of recordings Laid on her cell phone, watching or catching her husband on another phone having a sexual semi-explicit conversation with Mason that included the governor saying how much he enjoyed holding Mason's breasts. From there, the story took far too many strange twists and turns to recount here, but one stands out. With the State House of Representatives having opened an investigation as part of a potential impeachment process, State Attorney General Luther Strange, also a Republican, suddenly asked legislators to suspend their inquiry in November because it might interfere with an investigation his own office was conducting. Later, when U.S. Senator Jeff Sessions was nominated by President Trump to be U.S. Attorney General, Strange said, strangely, that his unspecified probe might not involve Bentley at all. Explain how a House impeachment inquiry concerning the governor could have interfered with the Attorney General's investigation if the latter proceeding had nothing to do with the governor. With one probe suspended and the other murky at best, Governor Bentley then appointed Strange to fill the Senate seat vacated by Sessions. On April the 6th, 7 Alabamans officially asked for an ethics probe into that appointment, suggesting an illicit deal between Bentley and Strange. The State Ethics Commission referred 4 charges against Bentley to state prosecutors, 3 of them technical campaign finance violations, and 1 vaguer, more ominous charge that Bentley did indeed misuse state monies. The next day, the Legislators' Council, operating on a second track that had finally reopened once Strange left the Attorney General's office, released a 100-plus page report outlining those charges in explicit detail. The council amassed copious evidence indicating that the governor did indeed personally and directly order numerous aides and state police to go to great and sometimes expensive lengths to cover up his illicit relationship with Mason. One allegation given credence in that report, at a certain time roughly concurrent to when Bentley was personally berating Mrs. Bentley's chief aide, Heather Hanna, for helping lead his wife to suspect an affair. Ms. Hanna's home and car were vandalized with messages calling her a bitch and telling her, "You will effing die." The council's report spurred the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Alabama Party Executive Committee to all to demand Bentley's resignation. On Monday, Bentley pled guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges related to his campaign finance practices, agreed to pay a fine, and give up his claim to as much as $1 million in future state pension payments, and resigned from office. Bentley was succeeded by another Republican, former Lieutenant Governor Kay Ivey. On Tuesday, Secretary of State John Merrill, also a Republican, suggested that Ivey can reissue Bentley's proclamation for an election to fill the remainder of Sessions' Senate term. This would force Strange to defend his appointment seat this year instead of waiting until November of 2018, as Bentley had originally arranged. Some 24 people have been identified as possible contenders either for that seat or in 2018, with several of the potential candidates known to be torn between running for governor or for U.S. Senate. Polls show that the early frontrunner for either seat would be suspended Chief Justice Moore. I have is off of Breitbart. 20 ways that Trump unraveled the administrative state. Scroll up a little bit if we get the hamster to cooperate. And he acts like he's wanting to try here. There we go. President Donald Trump campaigned to reduce regulations and unleash American jobs. He has unraveled the administrative state in 20 ways. The 20 measures are: number 1, in January, Trump signed an executive order that would cut 2 regulations for every new regulation proposed. If there's new regulation, we have to knock out 2. Number 2, President Trump signed an executive order advancing construction of the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines previously blocked by the Obama administration. Subsequently, the Trump administration approved the construction of both pipelines. Number 3, Trump signed an executive order in February known as the Enforcing the Regulatory Reform Agenda. The order will create regulatory watchdogs that will find new erroneous regulations to eliminate. Every regulation should have to pass a simple test. Does it make life better or safer for American workers or consumers? If the answer is no, we will be getting rid of it and getting rid of it quickly. Number 4, Trump signed a bill that rescinds the Federal Communications Commission broadband privacy rule that many scholars argue are duplicitous and erroneous. Critics of the rule, including FCC Chairman, argue that the Federal Trade Commission would be better suited to protect consumer privacy than the FCC. Katie McAuliffe, Executive Director for Digital Liberty, said this broadband rule was a power grab under the guise of privacy. Number 5, Trump signed J Resolution 58, which overturns the Education Department's rule that relates to how teacher training programs are assessed. The Washington Post explained the rule's unpopularity. Teachers' unions said the regulations wrongly tied ratings of teacher training programs to the performance of teachers' students' tests. Colleges and states argued that the rules were erroneous and expensive, and many Republicans argued that Obama's Education Department had overstepped the bounds of executive authority. Number 6, the president signed legislation that nullifies the Department of Education rule relating to state accountability requirements. The rule concerns states' accountability in identifying failing schools and reporting their plans for improving them to the federal government. Trump commented on rescinding both education rules, saying they eliminate harmful burdens on state and local taxes on school systems that could have cost states hundreds of millions of dollars. Signed order that minimizes the burden of Obamacare. The executive order makes it harder for the IRS to enforce Obamacare individual mandate. Napolitano called Trump's Obamacare executive order revolutionary. Number 8, President Trump signed an executive order killing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He told Breitbart News during the campaign that TPP is another terrible one-sided deal that rewards offshore and enriches other countries at our expense. I will stop Hillary's Obama trade in its tracks, bring millions of new voters into the Republican Party. We will move manufacturing jobs back to the United States, and we will make America great again. Number 9, an executive order instituting a federal hiring freeze. Although there is an exemption for the military, a federal hiring freeze was second point in President Trump's contract with the American voter. During his inaugural address, the president said, "For too long, a small group of our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost." Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Number 10, President Trump signed legislation that repealed a Securities and Exchange Commission rule mandated under the Dodd-Frank Act that requires companies such as ExxonMobil or Chevron to publicly disclose the taxes and fees they pay to foreign governments. Analysis shows that the regulation cost the industry $1.3 billion. President Trump instituted a freeze on all new regulations that have not been finalized. Number 12, President Trump signed a resolution that overturned the stream protection rule issued by Obama's Department of Interior during his last weeks in office. Trump said the resolution would eliminate another terrible job-killing rule. Number 13, President Trump signed an executive order that would review every executive agency and department to find out, as Trump says, being wasted and how services can be improved. Number 14, President Trump signed legislation that repeals a Social Security Administration rule that bars Americans from their right to bear arms. Breitbart's A.W.R. Hawkins wrote about the rule, saying, of all the regulations on the chopping block this week, the Social Security gun ban stands out as especially egregious. The Obama administration fashioned it in a way that gives the Social Security Administration the ability to bar certain beneficiaries from buying guns based on a need for help in managing their finances. Number 15, President Trump signed legislation that eliminates an erroneous methane emissions rule that effectively drove energy production from federal lands. Number 16, President Trump signed an executive order that would review the Clean Power Plan and possibly rescind Obama-era regulation that limits coal-fired power plants. Number 17, President Trump signed legislation legislation that repeals a Department of Labor rule that severely limits the ability of states to implement drug testing. Number 18, President Trump signed legislation that repeals the Bureau of Land Management's rule that would shift resource management from the states to the federal government. President Trump signed an executive order in February that scales back the 2010 Dodd-Frank financial overhaul. The executive order directs the Department of Treasury to consult with regulatory agencies and report to the president about what could be done to eliminate and considers overreaching. Number 20, President Trump signed an executive order delaying the Department of Labor's fiduciary rule that critics contend limit consumer choice for retirement account holders. White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon detailed President Trump's agenda in 3 parts: economic nationalism, national sovereignty, and deconstruction of the administrative state. At CPAC, Bannon said the way the progressive left runs is that if they can't get it passed, they're just going to put it in some sort of regulation in an agency, he said. That's all going to be deconstructed. The White House estimates that regulations that Trump has already repealed will save approximately $10 billion over the next 10 years, or $1 billion per regulation. Trump has said that he wants to eliminate a little more than 75% of the regulations in the Federal Register. 7 different rules to take care of one element, he said. We're cutting regulations massively for small business, and the president added. The next article that I have for you is off of the Blaze, and it says Planned Parenthood will grant Hillary Clinton Century Award at Centennial Gala. Have you ever heard such foolishness? Oh my goodness. Planned Parenthood has announced that it will grant former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton Century Award at a gala next month celebrating the organization's centennial. Planned Parenthood announced that the gala, part of its year-long centennial anniversary celebration, will take place in New York City. The organization said in a press release that it was granting Clinton the award for her 40 years of service to women and girls in the country. Cecile Richards, the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood, said in a statement that we're proud to celebrate Planned Parenthood's 100 years of strength and resilience at this moment in our history, as well as the tremendous outpouring of support for Planned Parenthood and our patients. This gala, reminder that Planned Parenthood has been around for 100 years and will continue to be here for the people who rely on us no matter what, Richards said. 100 years of care, education, and activism have changed everything, and we will not rest until access to health care and rights is a reality for all people. 2016 election cycle, Planned Parenthood offered Clinton its first ever primary endorsement and spent over $30 billion during the campaign to support her and other Democrats. Planned Parenthood will also give Shonda Rhimes, the creator of Grey's Anatomy, who recently joined the organization's national board, Champion of Change Award. While Clinton was Secretary of State, Planned Parenthood gave her its highest honor, the Margaret Sanger Award, named after its founder, Margaret Sanger. Its 100th anniversary took place in October of last year. The next article is PAC Review. And get the hamster to get with us here. It says Melania Trump wins damages for libel over bogus story. See the published apology. First, Melania Trump scored a legal and moral victory after bringing British newspaper The Daily Mail to its knees. The Daily Mail and Mail Online apologized and agreed to pay $2.9 million in damages to settle a libel lawsuit Melania had filed over a bogus story claiming she had worked as a call girl paid escort during her early days as a model. Melania's lawsuit had originally sought and punitive damages of at least $150 million. While neither party disclosed financial terms, sources told the Wall Street Journal that Daily Mail will pay Melania $2.9 million. Wall Street Journal put out a tweet that says Daily Mail to pay Melania Trump $2.9 million to settle lawsuits over article. The Daily Mail retracted the story and issued an apology on Wednesday, acknowledging its defamatory article was false. The Daily Mail newspaper and Mail Online dailymail.com website published an article on the 20th of August of 2016 about Melania Trump, which questioned the nature of her work as a professional model and republished allegations that she provided services beyond simply modeling. The article also claimed that Mr. and Mrs. Trump may have met 3 years before they actually met and staged their actual meeting as a ruse. We accept that these allegations about Mrs. Trump are not true, and we retract and withdraw them. We apologize to Mrs. Trump for any distress that our publication has caused her. To settle Mrs. Trump's 2 lawsuits against us, we have agreed to pay her damages and costs. The original Daily Mail story was published in August of 2016 under the headline "Racy Photos and Troubling Questions About His Wife's Past That Could Derail Trump." The article included old nude modeling photos of Melania to play up the Daily Mail's trashy narrative to hurt Donald Trump's presidential bid. Obviously, it failed miserably. Shortly after the article was published, Melania issued a vehement denial and sent the Daily Mail cease and desist letters to retract the story. When the paper refused, Melania unleashed her legal team. The slut-shaming attack on Melania Trump was one of the countless press assaults against President Trump's family. First daughter Ivanka Trump has been a target of numerous media hit pieces and failed retail boycotts by leftists who hate her dad. Melania has interviews that she's not bothered by haters because she's a lot stronger than people give her credit for. People don't really know me. I'm very strong. I'm very competent, she said. I can handle everything. Don't feel sorry for me. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines, and it says, Soros-funded group fighting voter integrity lawsuits. An organization funded by liberal billionaire George Soros and chaired by Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren's daughter is fighting lawsuits brought forth by election integrity groups in a number of cities. Demos, a New York City-based progressive public policy organization, is assisting unions in pushing back against election lawsuits filed in North Carolina and Florida. The group also is writing letters of interest in a suit in Pennsylvania. Amelia Warren Tigay, Warren's daughter, chairs the board of Demos. The Public Interest Legal Foundation is an Indiana-based legal group that litigates to protect election integrity, filed a lawsuit against Wake County, North Carolina on behalf of Voter Integrity Project North Carolina, a research organization dedicated to fair elections, after the county had failed to accurately maintain their voter rolls. The county also failed to provide records related to the maintenance of their voter rolls and possible non-citizen voting as required by federal law. According to publicly available data, Wake County has more registered voters on the rolls eligible to cast ballots than it has citizens who are alive, PILF wrote. The complaint states that voter rolls maintained by defendant for Wake County contain or have contained more registrants than eligible voting age citizens. The number of registrants in Wake County, North Carolina has been over 100% of eligible voting age citizens. A motion to dismiss the lawsuit was filed February 21st by the Wake County Board of Elections, and 3 attorneys, Senior U.S. Judge W. Earl Britt, ruled in favor of the Voter Integrity Project and denied the requests. So there's that, and then you can click on a link that'll take you to the Washington Free Beacon to read more on that if you want to know more. The next one we have is off of The Guardian, and it says Obama's Berlin visit to coincide with Trump's in Brussels. Former U.S. president will be in Germany on the 25th of May when incumbent is on the same continent meeting with NATO leaders. Barack Obama is to visit Berlin on his first trip to Europe since leaving office. The former president will be in Germany on May the 25th, the same day his successor Donald Trump is due in Brussels for a meeting of NATO leaders in what is expected to be the incumbent U.S. president's first foreign trip since taking office. Obama will travel to Germany for the launch of the summer celebratory events organized by the Protestant Church to mark its 500th anniversary. Whether intentional or not, the simultaneous presence of both men on the same continent will serve to underline the difficulty many Europeans have had in dealing with the concept of Trump as U.S. president and the great deal of nostalgia that exists for the Obama era. Obama is due to hold a speech in Berlin and to take part in a live discussion with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel titled Actively Shaping Democracy, Taking Responsibility at Home and Abroad. They will talk on a purpose-built stage in front of Berlin's most prominent landmark, the Brandenburg Gate. Obama's trip follows his acceptance of an invitation sent last May by the Bishop of Bavaria, Henrik Bedford Strom. More details about the visit are due to be released at a press conference on Wednesday. There is some irony in the Brandenburg Gate, which stands as a symbol of the Cold War and how it was overcome, as the backdrop for the two politicians getting together. In 2008, Merkel intervened to prevent the president candidate from holding a speech at the 18th century neoclassical arch, saying she did not think it was appropriate for him to use a nonpartisan symbol for electioneering purposes. In the end, he was forced to hold his speech at the nearby Victory Column. It was attended by a 100,000 strong crowd and was considered one of the high points of his election campaign. He later got the opportunity to speak at the Brandenburg Gate as president in 2013. It is Merkel who is facing a tough election herself in the coming September, and there will be many who see Merkel and Obama's joint appearance as an attempt by him to endorse her chances of a fourth re-election. Obama enjoys high popularity ratings in Germany, and his declaration during his outgoing visit as president to Berlin in November that if I were German and I had a vote, I'd support her, carried considerable weight. At the time of his remarks, Merkel had not yet officially announced whether she would be running again. Obama added he did not know if his statement helps or hurts. The Protestant Church marks 500 years since theologian Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg, giving birth to the Reformation. While Merkel is the daughter of a Protestant pastor, Obama's involvement in the commemorations has taken some by surprise. Although a Christian community when he lived in Chicago, he has never cited an allegiance to a specific religion. He told the traditional annual National Prayer Breakfast at the White House in 2013 that he often turned to the Bible for advice, could be a better president, husband, and father. In 2004 interview with the Chicago Sun-Times, he said while his grandmother had been a Methodist, his grandfather a Baptist, and his mother a very spiritual Christian, he had not had a structured religious upbringing. Christina Ozdraw, president of the Protestant Church Days, which is organizing the event, said Obama's presence would underline how Protestantism had not just remained a European affair, but has shaped societies and nations all over the world. She added, President Obama and Chancellor Merkel have said that their dedication as politicians is also an expression of their Christian faith. It will be really interesting to hear what the two of them say to us Christians in Europe. After Berlin on May the 26th, Obama is to visit Edinburgh, where he will address philanthropy and business leaders at a dinner at the Edinburgh International Conference Centre, organized by the Hunter Foundation, a charity organization set up by Scottish billionaire Sir Tom Hunter. President Trump is due to make his first official visit to Germany in July for the meeting of the G20 leaders of Hamburg. The next and final article in this episode is off of Western Journalism, and it says, mistakenly identifies a senator as a woman. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg mistakenly identified Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, as one of the women of the Senate who can help bring harmony to Washington, D.C. Ginsburg made the observation Monday night while receiving Allegheny College Prize for Civility in Public Life, which was also being awarded posthumously for her former to her former friend and colleague, Justice Anton Scalia. The event happened to fall the same day Scalia's replacement, Neil Gorsuch, was sworn in at the nation's 101st Supreme Court Justice. Ginsburg noted for the audience that when she was appointed to the court in 1993 by President Bill Clinton, the hearing was altogether civil. There was no effort to filibuster her. In fact, the confirmation vote was 96-3. Then the party breakdown in the Senate was 57 Democrats and 42 Republicans. The 83-year-old also pointed out that the Senate unanimously approved Ronald Reagan's appointment of Justice Scalia in 1986, when the body makeup was very similar to today, 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Ginsburg lamented the loss of civility in Washington and hoped past recipients of the Allegheny College Prize, like Senator John McCain and the women of the Senate, Senators Dianne Feinstein and Lindsey Graham, would help lead the way back to more harmonious workways. And there is video of this speech if you want to watch it for yourself. Of course, Ginsburg needs to look no further than the mirror if she would like that to be true. Last summer, the justice made a very unusual move of taking sides in the presidential race with very public and negative statements to the press about then candidate Donald Trump. She told CNN last July that Trump is a faker, adding he has no consistency about him. Comes to his head at the moment, he really has an ego. How has he gotten away with not turning over his tax returns? Be very gentle with him on that. Those comments came on top of ones she made to the New York Times when she said, I can't imagine what this place would be. I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president. Very confident that Hillary Clinton would win when asked about the next president making appointments to the Supreme Court. She is bound to have a few appointments in her term, the justice stated. Ginsburg's remarks caught the attention of the presidential candidate, who issued one of his famous tweets in response. Trump tweeted out, Justice Ginsburg of the United States Supreme Court has embarrassed all by making very dumb political statements about me. Her mind is shot. Resign. Retracted her ill-advised comments about Trump a few days later, writing, judges should avoid commenting on a candidate for public office. In the future, I will be more circumspect. Court watchers like Jonathan Turley believe that Ginsburg fully expected Clinton to appoint her replacement and resisted calls to retire during Obama's term. Now she faces that conservative may well replace her on the court appointed by Donald Trump. We can only hope. And that's all I have for you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed.